It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, and we are back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us on my quest to outbrew the magic world. And as always, the deck list will be in the description below. Today we are finishing up my 2023 roundup, my end of the year celebration of old decks and new, brewing a bunch, updating some lists, doing some new lists fresh, in preparation to start the new year of content. This Friday, Ravnica Remastered comes out, so the next 2 weeks is going to be all Ravnica Remastered content, talking about Ravnica and all that good stuff. But I decided to end my 2023 roundup with a deck that I've been wanting to revisit, and this is my attempt to revisit it make a list that I want to try to test and potentially pursue. Today we're talking about Henzie Toolbox Torre. A Jund 3-mana 3/3 Devil Rogue that says each creature you cast with a mana value 4 or greater has Blitz. The Blitz cost is equal to its mana cost. So the way Blitz works is that creature, you can choose to cast it for its Blitz. If you do, it comes in with haste, and then whenever the creature dies, you draw a card, and we sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. And it says Blitz cost you pay cost 1 less to cast for each time you cast your commander from the commands on this game. So Henzie is going to allow us to come in and start cheating our big creatures down for a little bit cheaper and give them haste when they come in. What this is going to allow us to do is take some 6, 7, 8 mana creatures that are really, really good, but the downside of them is haste, and smack haste on them, let them attack the turn they come down, and then we lose them that turn. Now, I think a lot of people would say, but why would you want to do that? We're going to lose those creatures. But the truth is, we're in Jund, we're in black, so we have access to things that'll let us reanimate creatures out of our graveyard. We have access to effects that will let us bring creature back. Or, like we're going to talk about a few of our effects, we have effects that let us sacrifice that creature before it sacrifices to its Blitz ability to something else to get other value. So we're going to kind of talk about some of our big Haymaker creatures we really want to land, how we can use those creatures before they die to our benefit, and then how we want to win the game. Obviously, the answer is combat, being a deck like this, but we do have some shenanigans that we can get involved there. Starting off with our creatures, this is a big chunk of the deck. The creatures are the important things, the things we want to slam down for 3, the things we want to cheat out. And so we want to make sure that the things we're cheating out either have big abilities that are going to benefit us when we cheat them out, or big effects whenever they attack or whenever we deal damage. We have access to a lot of the Jund dragons in these colors, and a lot of them do a lot on making treasures. So you'll things like Ancient Copper Dragon, Gnawbone, and Gnawbone, 2 creatures that make us treasures. Copper Dragon, whenever it deals damage to a player, we roll a d20 and make that many treasures. Gnawbone says whenever we deal combat damage to a player with a creature that we control, we create that many treasures. This is going to do 2 things. One, it's going to bankroll us. It's going to allow us to have more mana to play more creatures, cheat more things down with Henzie in 1 turn. But also, we could potentially use those treasures for other effects or do other things with that mana. But mainly, the biggest thing it's going to do is just bankroll us to take bigger and bigger turns. Ancient Brass Dragon, the black dragon of that Commander Legends cycle, says whenever it deals damage to a player, we roll a d20, and we can put any number of target creature cards with mana value X or less from graveyards on the battlefield or our control where X is the result. What I love about Brass Dragon in this deck is the later in the game we see it, it allows us to cheat it down and potentially get a bunch of creatures back from our graveyard that we've already blitzed in or we've already used, and allow us to get value off of it. A creature that I really like for getting our creatures back is First Responder. It's the beginning of our end step. We can return another creature we control to its owner's hand, then put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to that creature's power on First Responder. This can help us get around that Blitz sacrifice, put the creature back into our hand, allow us to recast it again. Same thing with something like Team or Sabertooth, allowing us to return that creature back to our hand so we don't lose it. Something like Torre the Incinerator can help us turn our creatures into value. We can sack a creature to deal damage equal to the creature's power to any target. We get 3 treasures that can help us turn, those big creatures that we put down into money. Protean Hulk, whenever it dies, we search our library for any number of creature cards with total mana value 6 or less and put them onto the battlefield. The big goal of Protean Hulk in a deck like this is to get a couple of these next creatures we're going to talk about that are going to try to use either our graveyard or creatures dying for our benefit. Something like Chainer says we can pitch a card to cast a creature spell from our graveyard this turn, and then it says whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, if we didn't cast it from our hand, it gains haste on our next turn. Felled into the third path, we can tap to make a copy of something that's in our graveyard, except it gets haste, and that could be pretty cool if we stick a pretty great creature in our graveyard. Things like Jolene, when we hit people, we can make treasures. Kethek has a pretty fun effect. We can have our end step. We can sack another creature. If we do, reveal cards on the top until we hit a non-legendary creature with less mana value and put it on the battlefield. So the bigger the creature we've blitzed in, the better chance we have of getting a smaller creature that we can slide in, and we don't have that ability on. But the rest of the deck is just packed with massive creatures that we want to do things with. Things like Atali Primal Conqueror. Whenever it comes in, everybody exiles until they hit a non-land card, and we can play as many of them as we want. Giant Ataphage, when it deals damage to a player, we make a copy of it, and that's pretty great because then we get one that sticks around and one that goes to the graveyard. Junji, the Midnight Sky, whenever it dies, we can return a non-dragon card from a graveyard back onto the battlefield under our control, and if we can get it back or keep getting it back somehow or get it back through other effects, we can reanimate more of our graveyard. Ilharg the Raised Boar, whenever it attacks, we can put a creature from our hand tapped and attacking. It goes back to our hand at the beginning of this end step. But what I like about Ilharg is this allowed us to maybe put in something like these big dragons in for free without them dying to that Blitz trigger, and then pulling them back to our hand after we're done, so we can do it over and over and over again. Things like Elder Brain can help us play with our opponent's hand. Kogla can come in and fight creatures and destroy our opponent's things. Pathbreaker Ibex is a way to buff ourselves, give ourselves kind of an overwhelming stampede, potentially win the game, and on and on. We have these creatures, some creatures that have really good effects, and some creatures that can allow us to try to get things back. But it's not just creatures that can allow us to get creatures back or prevent them from going away altogether. Reanimate and Victimize are both reanimation spells that can get creatures back from our graveyard after they've died. We're playing a suite of Feign Death, Undying Malice, and Rush to Rebirth. Spells that try to take advantage of our creatures dying. Feign Death and Undying Malice will both bring a creature of our choice back whenever it dies. That will help us with the Blitz trigger because we'll still get the draw off the Blitz, but then that creature comes back. Rush to Rebirth is kind of like that Kethek trigger where we search our library. This one, we search our library for a creature with a card with less mana value and put it on the battlefield tapped. So again, if we know a big creature is going to die, we use one of these abilities and either bring it back with those two or get something good with Rushed Rebirth. We have things like Industrial Advancement at the beginning of our next end step. We can sack a creature. If we do, look at the top X cards where X is that creature's mana value, and we put a creature from among them onto the battlefield. This is great for those big 6, 7, 8 mana creatures. We could sack it to the advancement instead of its Blitz trigger and get some sort of value. One of my favorite enchantments for getting value off of our creatures that are already going to die is Evolutionary Leap. For a green and sacrificing a creature, we can reveal cards on the top of our library until we hit a creature and put that card into our hand. If these creatures are going to die anyway to the Blitz and we get a card no matter when they die, why not try to just get a couple creatures back into our hand to refill our hand and set our Blitz up for next turn where we can go off again. Riveteer's Ascendancy says whenever we sack a creature, we can return to our creature card with lesser mana value from your graveyard or the battlefield tapped. So the bigger the creature we blitz in, we can get something cheaper back from our graveyard back to the battlefield. And so in all reality, if this is the loop we're going to try to take advantage of, blitz things in, attack with them, get the value when they're on the battlefield, they hit the graveyard or we bring them back. And if they have to hit the graveyard, try to get some sort of advantage as they leave the battlefield. And I think we're going to do a pretty good job at nailing our opponents to the wall for that. We have the new card Skullspore Nexus, which is going to make us tokens whenever our non-token creatures die to the Blitz ability, and that's pretty great because then that's, again, going to give us more value. We're playing something like Sneak Attack, which can help us completely cheat out Henzie's cost altogether, give us the same ability. It gives us a Blitz-esque type ability, but we don't draw the card with Blitz. We just bring it in with haste. But for 3 or 4 mana, we could Sneak Attack in 3 or 4 creatures and do more than we could for just the Blitz cost on Henzie. We're also playing things like Rhythm of the Wild, so we can just straight out give a creature haste if we want to hard cast it instead of putting into Blitz. But how do we end the game? What's our ways we end the game? Well, obviously combat. I threw an aggravated assault as a way for us to potentially end the game with just multiple combats. Remember that the creature sacrifices itself at the end of turn, and it has haste, which means we can continually attack over multiple combats because it has haste. And with enough of these flying and these big creatures we have, we should be able to end the game. With things like Old Gnawbone and Ancient Copper Dragon, we only need to hit with a couple creatures for a couple damage for aggravated assault to be able to go near infinite or give us enough combats to end the game if need be. We're also playing things like the Reaver Cleaver, which will give us treasures equal to the number of damage we deal to, again, factor into this idea. Make enough mana to make that loop happen if that's the loop we want to go. We also have things like Freaking Reclamation, which can get creatures back to our hand from the graveyard and allow us to abuse these creatures with big effects over and over and over again. And then if someone removes one of our creatures, hopefully we can get it back that way. But okay, I think that's about what I can do to explain the actual creature base itself. Really could be your choice. I'm going to lean a little bit towards the treasures because I find it works really well with aggravated assault and things like that. Also, the more treasures you have, the more creatures we could play. There's going to be a lot of people who have different opinions on what creatures go into this stack, but these are the creatures I wanted to play, and so these are the ones I threw in. Let me know what creatures you think belong in Henzie in the comment section below. But let's go into the cards I wanted to include, but I cut. I like to talk in these videos about how we these are version 1.0 deck lists. These are decks we haven't tested yet, which means there's inevitably cards that we cut that are probably belong or probably good. We just had to cut them for one or two particular reasons. And here's a couple creatures that I really wanted to put in, but due to space, I had to bring out. The first was Marag, Fury of Akum. I think this acts as a very similar way to Aggravated Assault in helping us end the game with multiple combats. Whenever land at ETBs, if it's during our main phase, there's additional combat phase after this phase. So how Marag would work for us is main 2, after our first combat, we would play a land and get another combat, and it's at the beginning of that combat we untap all creatures we control, and we would just be able to get additional combats that way. No, it's not like Aggravated Assault where we go off continually with combats, but again, 2 combats a turn at minimum, hopefully, is going to really hurt our opponent depending on the things we're putting down. I thought about Ghalta, Stampede Tyrant from Ixalan, allowing you to dump your entire hand of creatures in for free once it comes down. This seems like it'd be really good because you just pay the Blitz cost on Ghalta and then dump the rest of your hand in. The rest of your hand doesn't come in with haste though, so we'd still need things like Rhythm of the Wild to do that, to get them haste. But I still like this effect, and I think it could be good in the right scenarios. Bringing the Last Gift is effectively living death on a creature when it enters the battlefield. If we cast it, each player sacrifices all of their creatures they control and then returns all creature cards from their graveyard that weren't put there this way back to the battlefield. This could, if we have a big graveyard and only this on the battlefield, we get to swap all those creatures. And that could potentially lead to some bad lethal for our opponents. And the last card was the new Ayara from March of the Machine. Says we could sack another creature and it deals X damage to target opponent or battle, and we get X life, where X is that card's mana value. I think this could be a really good sack outlet to sack those creatures that are already going to die to the Blitz trigger and get value. And then on the backside, at the beginning of our combat, we can bring something back with haste and exile at the next end step. And the good part about that is that then we could sacrifice it to one of those other effects and keep it in the graveyard if we wanted to continually get it back with Ayara. I think this is one of those creatures that is on my very high list to bring back in because I think it fits our conducive playstyle. But again, on version 1.0 of the deck, where I'm just trying to make cards fit, I wasn't quite sure, and I just tried to build the best thing I could. But getting into our playtest, we got a 4-lander here. I think one of the things that we need to keep in mind with Henzie is that we want Henzie down quickly, but we don't want us to run Henzie out into anything. We want to have things to play with Henzie. So some games it may be easy just to put him down as quickly as possible, but we don't want to just leave Henzie out there without creatures to play. Here we have a Gwenna and Cauldron of Souls, which is a card that works really well with Henzie, giving all of our creatures persist. Creatures we choose persist until end of turn. Basically how that would work with the Blitz is they die to the Blitz trigger and then come back with a -1/-1 counter on them. I like this hand. There's enough lands. We just need to draw into some gas for Henzie. But we have nothing for this Woodland Cemetery. So I think I put that in tapped first. We would have this red for the mountain for the Rootbound Crag, and these guys will both come in untapped at this point. But again, nothing to do on turn 1. I think we do that. Turn 2, we see a Foreboding Ruins. But I think I get the mountain down here. Again, nothing to do on turn 2, and that's okay. Ideally, we'd like to see some ramp there. And geez, now we're flooding out lands. We'd ideally like to see some ramp there. We do play some of it, but that's okay. Turn 3, we'll play the Rootbound Crag, and we'll get down Gwenna. Gwen will help us when we start casting creatures with power 5 or greater to get counters on her and untap her. Next turn, we see First Responder. Like I said, a creature I like a lot because we can start bouncing things back to our hand and taking advantage. I think here I play the Path of Ancestry and get Henzie down and start setting up for next turn where hopefully we can play some more things. This turn we see Deadly Relic. Okay, great removal spell. Again, I was hoping to get some gas, but we put on our 5th land there and we play First Responder. Now we can start bouncing things back to our hand if we want and putting counters on it. Which, again, no creature here. Next turn, another land, jeez. Get the Twilight Mire down. I guess we'll get Cauldron of Souls down. We can always bounce Gwenna back to our hand if we wanted to at our end step to put some counters on First Responder. And, of course, classic another land. Cool. I did not expect to draw 6 lands in the first couple turns, so let's give this one another go. Okay, 3-lander with a Rampant Growth. Looks plenty good to me. Let's get this one started. We draw another land. Jeez. The Shuffler likes me today, I guess. Haunted Ridge, Death Capulator are both going to come in tapped unless we have 2 or more lands. Spire Garden should come in tapped no matter what if we're playing a 4-player game. And we have Goreclaw there, so that's great. It's going to start reducing some of our creatures. We'll get that down. Turn 2, play the Spire Garden. Let's get that Rampant Growth going. We don't have access to, but we have 2 red sources, 2 black sources, 2 green sources. We'll just go get a... mountain. Put that on the battlefield tapped and shuffle. All right, turn 3, we draw another land there. We'll get the Haunted Ridge down. And I like the idea of just getting Goreclaw down here, getting some reduction. We also could have ideally put Henzie down, but I like Goreclaw because that 2-cost reduction to power creatures of power 4 greater is going to come in important, especially for something like Torre. All right, next turn we see Gwenna, which isn't bad either. I think here we put Gwenna down and continue to build. I kind of want to make sure we have enough resources down, and on turn 4, I doubt our opponents are going to be too far ahead of us. Turn 5, we see Rain of Rich is a really fun card. We get 2 treasures when it comes in, and then whenever we cast a spell that has a mana from a treasure spent for it to cast, it has Cascade. I'd probably put that down this turn, and that would leave us with 1 mana, open the Gwenna, and then 2 treasures. We could use a treasure in Gwenna to cast Henzie, and we would cascade into a reanimate rip that we'll just put on the bottom and not use. But okay, now we have the treasures set up for next turn, so we can get a good cascade. This turn we throw that Game Trail and tapped, and I don't want to blitz the Torre out because it's a good creature. So I think I'd tap Gwenna for the 2, pay 1 of the treasures and the rest for the lands for Torre. We cascade into Junji, and that's literally perfect. We put Junji down as well. And so the fun part is when we go to cast Torre, Gwenna will untap itself. And then when we cast Junji, we could tap it for mana, untap it again. I guess the untap would be on the trigger. So it won't. It'll still get 2 counters and untap. So it'll end up getting 4 counters this turn because the Junji and the Torre. Now, I mean, other than the lack of haste, we have a couple big dragons ready to go. We would have enough mana to get this Industrial Advancement down, but I'd rather leave the Feign Death up and maybe wait a turn. Now, on our end step, we'd have the Torre trigger. Ideally here, we'd want to sacrifice Junji, right, and get something back, but there's nothing to get back, so I don't want to do that yet. One more turn, we see Veldin. So I'll probably take a big swing here with Torre's Junji and Goreclaw, giving them all the big buff. If any of them die, we have a way with Veldin to get them back, or the Feign Death to protect them. And then now we just need to draw into any sort of gas to keep the game plan going. Plenty of mana. The Rain of Riches will help us Cascade, hopefully, if we don't use all of our treasures. If we need more, we can always use Torre. But let me know what you guys think of Henzie down in the comments section below. If you run a Henzie deck, let me know what you think of my list, what I should add. I'm excited to give this one a shot going forward, and if you're looking for updates on that, let me know down in the comment section below. But I will catch you guys next time.